After a slew of releases in the early 80s, the slasher genre was pretty clearly defined. You needed a bad guy, a unique weapon, a group of oblivious teens, and a final girl that, despite their innocence, has an inner strength that can be called on in the grand finale. Characters would often do stupid things like running up the stairs when trying to escape a killer, or ignore the most obvious hints of someone's guilt. Yet, a film came along in 1996 that completely shifted both the slasher genre, as well as horror as a whole. Hell, we're still feeling the meta ripples even in current-day cinema. So it's finally time on Real Slashers that we take a look at the film that forever changed the slasher genre, Wes Craven's Scream.
He's sick for fucks. You've seen one too many movies.
Nah, Sid! Don't you blame the movies! Movies don't create psychos! Movies make psychos more creative!
I'm Tyler Nichols with JoBlo Horror Originals, and thank you so much for joining me for this very special episode of Real Slashers. We've covered a ton of slashers over the years, and it's finally time to put my favorite of all time in my crosshairs. Because this goes against the grain and breaks down the genre in an interesting way. And it's not all characters making the right choices 100% of the time. It's our smart lead going up the stairs when chased by a killer, despite calling out that stupidity on its own.
They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
It's losing your virginity despite every horror film saying that's a bad idea. It's going somewhere by yourself even though you know it won't end well. And in the process, giving an excuse for all the victims that came before them.
Hello?
Scream starts with an incredible opening scene with Drew Barrymore as Casey Becker. It's a fantastic scene that showcases why Ghostface is different from his brethren. He's tormenting his victim with mind games via movie trivia. I don't know about you, but that sounds right up my alley. After Casey and her boyfriend are dispatched, we meet our actual lead, Sydney Prescott. Neve Campbell is phenomenal here, and Sydney is one of the best final girls in existence. She's strong-willed and feels like the perfect slasher protagonist. In fact, let's get into all the characters. We've got Tatum Riley, Sydney's best friend and sister of Dewey Riley, the doofy deputy that is trying his best. At the height of her friend's fame, Courtney Cox appears as Gail Weathers, a news reporter who's a thorn in Sydney's side.
I'll send you a copy.
And a bit of a TMZ-style journalist. Billy Loomis is Sid's boyfriend and suspect number one. His best friend, and Tatum's boyfriend, Stu Mocker, mostly seems like he's just there to make a mockery of the situation. And finally, we have every movie buff's favorite character, Randy Meeks.
There's always some stupid bullshit reason to kill your girlfriend.
Randy is every horror fan congealed into this wisecracking video store clerk. Quickly, it becomes clear that Sydney is a target for the killer, and her boyfriend is even the prime suspect, but they smartly take suspicions away from him and are sure to have many red herrings throughout the story. And like any good slasher, while a bunch of their classmates are getting killed, what better to do than to party? The party scene in Scream's finale takes place over 42 minutes and makes up a bulk of the film's runtime, and it's easily one of the greatest set pieces in all of horror. The design of the Mocker house is wonderful, but also how they're able to separate people so effortlessly. Tatum gets asked to grab some beers and is locked in the garage, forced to take on Ghostface. She meets a pretty grisly demise and proves that garage door openers are strong as hell. Randy is left to watch movies by himself while Dewey and Gail prowl the perimeter to try and keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary. And even a kill that seems fairly random earlier, the Fonz himself as the principal getting murderlated, comes back in a big way.
They found Principal Henry dead. He was gutted and hung from the goalpost on the football field.
Who wouldn't want to leave a party to go see their principal strung up on a goalpost at the football stadium? Wait, don't answer that. But it's a great way to whittle down the partygoers and give Ghostface some opportunities for mayhem. Before long, nearly everyone is separated, and Ghostface is able to take them out, one by one. It's expertly crafted, with the killer's location always being thought out and logical. Even the red herrings are still in full force, with even Randy getting suspicion cast on him. Which is when we get the greatest killer reveal in all of horror. And we'll talk about that next.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
No, Billy!
Your slasher is only as good as your villain, and Ghostface was able to enter the pop culture zeitgeist almost immediately upon release, with his trademark elongated white face, black cloak, combat boots, and hunting knife. Ghostface pretty quickly found himself in the conversation, with greats like Freddy, Michael, and Jason. And it's no surprise after that memorable opening scene and slowed down run towards Drew Barrymore. But another thing that makes him stand out is his ability to actually speak to his victims. He's not a silent stalker type like Jason or Michael. He takes more of a Freddy Krueger approach to his killings. He toys with his victims over the phone. He's knowledgeable, not only of his victims, but also movies, which he uses to toy with them. Yet who's exactly behind the mask? In the first Scream, Stu Macher and Billy Loomis take up the mantle of Ghostface. Billy wants revenge against Sidney's mom, Maureen Prescott, for tearing his own family apart. She had slept with Billy's father and caused his mother to leave them. So he murders Maureen and places the blame on someone else Maureen was sleeping with, Cotton Weary. Which, I mean, imagine you have to cast a side role in your horror movie, and you end up lucky enough to cast Liev fucking Schreiber. Talk about lucky. Either way, Billy is pissed and he decides killing Maureen just isn't enough. So he's going to kill Sidney and a bunch of her friends on the 1-year anniversary. Then he'll blame it on Sidney's father, completely tearing the family apart, in the same way that Billy perceived his own to be torn apart. Then, as for Stu's motivations, I mean,
Peer pressure. I'm far too sensitive.
But they bite off more than they can chew and are thwarted by a combination of distractions from Gale and quick thinking from Sid. Stu gets a TV in the face for his efforts, while Billy proves that...
Careful. This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
That's why she always outsmarted the killer in the big chase scene at the end. Only virgins can do that. Don't you know the rules? What rules? You don't... There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
Scream puts all slashers in its sights and makes sure you never look at them the same way again. By deconstructing horror, and more specifically the slasher genre, the film was able to provide an angle not yet seen before on screens. And the meta-ness really shows through during Randy's speech. See, when Stu's holding a party at his place to help distract from the murders, or so he says, Randy takes this as the perfect opportunity to show everyone some horror movies. It's like preparation.
Terror Train, Prom Night. How come Jamie Lee Curtis is in all of these movies?
So they know what dumb character decisions in slashers look like. And like any good movie buff, he has to interrupt the film with interesting facts. But hey, this time I'd say it's worth it. These are Randy's 3 rules to successfully survive a horror movie. Number 1, no hanky-panky, sex leads to death. Mostly. Number 2, no drugs or no drinking alcohol. This will go punished. And finally, never say I'll be right back, because you won't be. But there's so much more to it, as each of these incidents is shown as thwarted during the rest of the runtime. All of these kids are drinking and doing drugs, and they all just leave. Hell, in the midst of Randy's speech, Sidney is losing her virginity to Billy. And sure, the circumstances are a bit iffy, but we don't see Stu for quite a while after this.
I'll be right back!
Even though the film may not be strict at abiding by them, having the characters acknowledge all the ways that would usually get them killed in a situation like this further separates it from the more straightforward horror of the 80s. While there's certainly a place for both, Scream helped it evolve.
Can I be the helpless victim?
Okay, let's see. No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
Scream released in the United States on December 18, 1996, and only brought in $6.4 million on its opening weekend. This was not a spectacular opening, but the film had legs, ending its run at $173 million. The film was a massive success with critics, with a 78% fresh rating for the usually hated slasher genre. It was the kind of movie that you could get people to watch and enjoy despite their own preconceived notions. They didn't have to like slashers. If anything, having any sort of opinion on horror just further helps sell the circumstances in the film, positive or negative. The Scream franchise would become an absolute juggernaut. We would receive 5 additional entries, with the 7th film expected to arrive in 2025. Whether that movie is able to capture the same magic as the original is anyone's guess, though it definitely has a lot working against it at this point. Thankfully, the original Scream remains to be one of the most influential horror films of all time. It completely changed how modern audiences look at the horror genre. You can't see a horror film these days without seeing Scream's meta influence. And you sure as hell can't ask the question,
"What's your favorite scary movie?"
without thinking of Scream.
Since the 1970s, Hollywood's knack for turning old stories into very new money has dominated the box office and still shows no signs of slowing down. Of course, I'm referring to franchise sequels, something that both divides and unites audiences in our desire to praise the good ones and completely overreact to the bad ones. But the point being made is that subsequent installments to popular movies is something that has existed for decades, and this is especially true for the horror genre, as horror movies tend to have smaller sets and lower budgets, which makes the films faster and cheaper to make. And for as long as sequels have existed, so has the ongoing clash of opinions, where some folks think that sequels should be made, albeit made well, and others are wishing that this trend of IP overkill would end.
Who would want to do that? Sequels suck.
No, wow. Come on, man.
Well, I don't want to speak for everyone, but spoiler alert, I love a good sequel, and I especially love a sequel that knows exactly what it is and what its audiences will think about it, and then completely subverts our expectations while winking right in our faces. And let's be honest, if anyone is going to take on the task of following up the most iconic teen slasher movie of the 90s while building on the original story and setting up interest for more installments, it had to be the man who started it all.
It's kind of a new classic. I think there might be other films like it, where we start commenting on actual films and actual film actors and actresses. I think it's kind of refreshing in a way, because we're really talking about a reality that's very much a part of our reality. Even though they're all sort of franchisable names and everything else, there's nothing harmful about talking about it in a film.
And it was this very concept that helped equip Craven and writer Kevin Williamson with the perfect idea for Scream 2. Using that self-aware meta approach, they would play into all the cliches that audiences have come to expect from sequels. And in today's episode, we are going to look at one of the genre's best follow-up films to figure out why it's awesome and just how classic a sequel can really be. I'm Kier Gomes with JoBlo Horror, and you're watching Deconstructing.
He's not a Nick at Night rerun type of guy. He wants to break some new ground.
Now, this show is all about breaking down what makes a certain movie tick, and not so much a movie review. So, with that being said, I will give a brief description of the plot, and then we'll be breaking down the movie from our 4 key categories. First, we talk about origin, where we discuss a brief history of the film and how it got made. Then we get into legacy, where we talk about some of the movie's most remembered moments that are still in the pop culture canon today. Followed by mystery and trivia, where I'll give you some fun facts about the movie that you can share with your fellow film lovers. And finally, we end it off by talking about the movie's X Factor, where we look at that one special moment that nobody could have accounted for. And believe me when I say, this movie has plenty to deconstruct, and I still have to fit in time for my Justice for Randy rant before the end.
How would you make it different?
I'd let the geek get the girl.
So if you're ready, then keep your backs to the wall, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe for all your favorite horror content. And let's hit play on Scream 2 continues the story of Sidney Prescott as she attempts to put her past behind her and salvage what's left of her life after the events of the first film. When bodies start dropping at her college, Sidney and the remaining survivors, including Dewey, Gail, and Randy, need to work together in order to survive the threat of a new sadistic serial killer donning the mantle of Ghostface. Now, I have some personal takes on why I love this movie, and I'll definitely get into that. But first, let's take a look at the extremely interesting history of Scream 2. Now, if you didn't know, the original Scream 2 script was actually leaked online during the rise of internet popularity, as in the internet itself becoming popular. And the leak revealed the names of the killers and most of the general plot. I think there's a whole video that could be made about this one topic. Oh wait, there is. Make sure you check out our JoBlo Horror Original where we talk about what the f happened to this movie.
It'd be stupid to pull this movie. All this free press, they're gonna have huge numbers this weekend.
With the original plot details now being widely spread through the internet, Kevin Williamson had to rewrite the entire thing, only using some of the original ideas from the script. But you know that old saying in Hollywood, the show must go on. So the movie began production in June of 1997 with only a half of a script to work with while Williamson was finishing the new one. This resulted in more improvised scenes from the cast and more screenplay input from Craven. And to avoid the same situation moving forward, Kevin Williamson wrote a script with 3 very different endings so that if the word did get out, the information and details on the film would likely be incorrect. It wasn't until nearly 20 years later that Kevin Williamson himself admitted that the leaked script was never considered to be the official version. He quotes, "They were worried the killer's identity would be leaked, so we wrote several endings, 3 in all, if memory serves, and when actors and potential crew members asked to read the script, we would send them the script with the dummy ending. There was even a fake ending where Dewey was the killer. They existed as a decoy and nothing more. Extreme measures, but we really wanted to keep the killer's identity a secret." With a makeshift script and a short production schedule, it was time to round up a cast. Neve Campbell was asked to reprise her role for a potential sequel before the movie was even announced. Wes Craven stated that he offered her the part with the pitch that her character would be the only one guaranteed to survive by the end. And seeing how the character of Sidney Prescott is still an important name among iconic final girls, it's safe to say that Craven made a smart move.
Consider it done.
Of course, you don't have a Scream movie without the sinister voice of Roger Jackson as Ghostface, and Dimension even got Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and Jamie Kennedy to return as their characters. Oh yeah, and Cotton Weary, played by Liev Schreiber, had a great part in this movie as well.
Talk to Cotton. He's the man you want to interview. He's the hero.
With a newly minted all-star cast of young actors, a legendary horror director, and a hard working-on-the-fly screenwriter, it was time to roll camera on Scream 2. Now, what do we talk about when we talk about Scream 2? First of all, this movie cemented one element that has remained consistent throughout the entire franchise thus far by introducing Ghostface to be a different killer. Now, up until this point, it was rare to see horror movies that reprise the same protagonist but completely switch out the killers. I mean, look at the slashers before this. Nightmare on Elm Street, always Freddy. Halloween, always Michael Myers. Except for Halloween Ends, I guess. The point is, in the original Scream film, the killers died at the end and 4 of our main characters survived. This movie brings back all the final protagonists and keeps Ghostface as the movie's bad guy, but the identity of Ghostface is never the same across multiple movies. That may not seem like too far of a stretch now, but at the time, it was the entire allure of watching these movies.
Nice twist, huh? Didn't see it coming, did ya?
As Scream was the breakout success of 1996, Scream 2 delivered on following up the best pieces from the original while adding something fresh and new to the saga. Scream 2 was released to theaters in December of 1997, and to no one's surprise, it was a huge hit. The movie was made on an increased budget than the first, obviously, with Miramax giving Craven a budget of $24 million. And the movie finished its box office lifetime with a worldwide total of $172.4 million. And the movie still remains in the top 500 highest grossing US films of all time. Reviews for the movie were also generally favorable, with Rotten Tomatoes showing a strong 82% and praising the movie's meta commentary and fresh story. You know what? Kinda hard to disagree. And I don't know about 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, but I do know that us at JoBlo Horror are 100% cotton.
So, you a big 100% Cotton fan?
And on a more personal note, I'm still disappointed that they axed my man Randy Meeks in the second act of this movie. While I can ultimately make the case for killing off the most knowledgeable character in the cast is a smart idea for Ghostface, I feel like since we saw Randy laying dead and bloody in the back of that news van, things for Scream could never be quite the same. Sure, I love all the Scream films, and sure, I don't think a 45-year-old movie geek is the missing ingredient from the saga at this point, but I really believe that ever since this moment in Scream 2, the writers of every Scream movie since have been trying to work in a suitable movie buff replacement. Take Kirby or Sam, for example. What I'm really trying to say is that no matter how many brilliant things this movie gives me, I'll always think of Scream 2 as the one where Randy dies, and that's just f***ing tragic.
A lot of shit happens at the movies. People get robbed, shot, maimed, murdered. Multiplex is just a very dangerous place to be these days.
But of course, how can we talk about Scream 2 and the iconic status that it's reached without talking about
Mrs. Loomis? What?
Billy's mother!
Who are we kidding? Did any of you suspect Aunt Jackie from Roseanne to be the mastermind behind these gruesome killings? I sure as hell didn't. Part of the fun of the Scream films is trying to figure out not only who may be wearing the Ghostface mask and killing off the core group, but also trying to predict what kind of outlandish motives they may have. And Scream 2 does a wonderful job of subverting those expectations by giving you a reason to suspect everyone in the group without giving any thought to this small-time Gale Weathers wannabe who is secretly out for blood for her son's killer.
If the killer is repeating what happened in Woodsboro, it's quite possible that the killer could be from Woodsboro. That's all.
But I did make one note on this scene where it would have been cool if at one point during the movie, Sidney maybe saw Debbie Salt and gave like a throwaway line or a look to say like, "Don't I know her?" And that maybe would have given the reveal a little bit more weight in my opinion, especially since the other killer, Mickey, brilliantly played by Timothy Olyphant, is one of the least likely suspects.
No, Billy was a sick fuck who tried to get away with it. Mickey is a sick fuck who wants to get caught. Yeah, see?
And also, can we just appreciate that we still kind of thought Derek was the killer even up to the very last second? So, remember when I said that the original script for the movie was leaked online, which led to a huge rewrite? Well, get this. Turns out Matthew Lillard, who plays Stu Macher, my personal favorite Ghostface, can be seen in an uncredited cameo appearance in Scream 2 as like a party goer at Sydney's college.
Surprise cameo just for you.
While the character of Stu Macher had been killed in the previous movie, it was revealed in 2009 by Lillard that the original plan for Scream 3 was to have Stu Macher revealed to be alive and the killer behind the events of the second movie. Something that I think we all hope to see at some point in Radio Silence's Scream trilogy. And honestly, for a franchise as meta as this one, why wouldn't they use the original idea for the third movie in a later sequel? I'm just saying.
We're gonna carry on and plan the sequel, because let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.
And speaking of cameos, it's time for a game. Let's see if you can answer this question. Which I Know What You Did Last Summer star played Cece in a supporting role in this film? Was it A, Jennifer Love Hewitt, B, Bridget Wilson, or C, Sarah Michelle Gellar? Comment below if you know the answer.
Do you want to die tonight, Cece?
And now for the big one, the most anticipated, the reason we're all here, the X Factor. So in case I wasn't clear, I love the Scream movies. But when it comes to the X Factor, none of that matters. I'm on the hunt for the one thing that takes this movie from a good sequel to an iconic film of its own merit. I'm looking for something you can't hear about in any old retrospective on the internet. I'm looking for something weird.
It's really weird, isn't it? To think this fuss is all because of you.
Initially, I wanted to use this segment as a way to talk about the story arc and incredible character work. We can see how the trauma and the pain of Scream impacted these once innocent people and how each of them are dealing with that pain differently. Randy hides behind English accents and the escapism of movies, while Sidney will probably never trust a man the same way again. Gale capitalized while Dewey hardened, and Mrs. Loomis masterminded a body count of 10 victims. But can that be the X Factor? I don't think so. It was clearly an intentional point made by Williamson and Craven. And as it was with our last episode, I was just about to throw in the towel and give up on finding the X Factor when all of a sudden, it hits me.
Hello?
So the X Factor for the original Scream movie was obviously the opening kill scene with Drew Barrymore. And before I could finish replaying that awesome scene in my head, I realized that the opening kill scene in Scream 2 is probably the most memorable scene in the entire movie. Could it be that the ultimate meta-ness of Scream 2 is that it shares the very same JoBlo horror deconstructing X Factor as the original? Was hiring Jada Pinkett Smith and Omar Epps to be killed in the first scene at a movie theater the perfect way to open a movie that audiences would be seeing for the first time in a movie theater and completely scared the shit out of us? Is it possible that the opening kill scene in Scream 2 is the thing that sets this movie apart? No, not quite.
I hope that was an off-the-cuff remark that holds no subtext whatsoever.
Hold your horses now. Before you go commenting, let me explain. It's not the opening scene as a whole, although I guess it could be. This movie opens up at a movie theater where two students are at the premiere of a movie based on the events of the first movie. Is that too meta?
Star of the Gale Weathers press conference, based on the book by Gale Weathers, soon to be a major motion picture starring Gale Weathers.
They're going to see a movie called Stab, and it's based on a book that Gale Weathers wrote about the Ghostface killings from Scream. The Stab movies and the characters' commentary on them have become kind of a mirror to reflect the Scream franchise fans, but in this movie, it represents the beginning of almost every other killer's motive going forward. Spoilers for the entire Scream franchise, starting now. So, Stab is introduced in Scream 2, and if you look at each killer's motive going forward, the Stab movies play some role in the ultimate motivation. Aside from Roman's motive in Scream 3, which was probably the weakest out of all of them. However, he did do the killings on a Stab set, so it counts. Then you look at Scream 4 with Jill's envy for Sidney's fame as a survivor. That was something that was born with Stab. Scream 5, of course, deals with toxic fandom as two crazed fans of the Stab franchise attempt to inspire a fresh new story. And even Mickey's motive in Scream 2 somewhat matches this theory. The whole "movies made me do it" bit really touches on similar ideas.
Mickey was a good boy, but my God, that whole blame the movies motive. Did you buy that for 1 second?
So no doubt, the Stab movies are indeed the X Factor of Scream 2. At the end of the day, Scream 2 is a great sequel, but it's also a great movie. It's something that I love, and after deconstructing it, I finally understand why.
Did you get that on film? Yes, I got that on film.
Alright folks, this is where I kick things off to you and ask that you comment your thoughts on Scream 2 down below. Also, please feed the algorithm with your theories on the upcoming Scream 6. We would love to read them. But of course, always remember that stupid people turn back and smart people run. So I'm gonna be smart and run out of here. Good night.
Scream was a game changer of a film, full stop. It showed the relevancy of both the slasher genre that was on life support in the late 90s could still turn some heads, and it also showed that the late great Wes Craven still had some nightmares to share with us. Much like his Mount Rushmore contemporaries Tobe Hooper and John Carpenter, not all of Craven's films were all-time classics, and just a year before Scream released, he had a critical and commercial bomb, Vampire in Brooklyn. Now Scream came out hot. It was a smash hit with $173 million at the box office, which was the highest grossing slasher film of all time until 2018's Halloween iteration, and was a hit with critics who saw it as simultaneously a send-up and reinvention of the genre. particularly in the horror genre and doubly so for a critical and financial success like Scream. Scream 2 came out the very next year and was another huge success. It had a higher budget, but still crossed over that $170 million threshold and was received well from both critics and fans alike. While the first film was a meta-concept film about slashers, the sequels went the same route when discussing the glut of slasher sequels, and even poked fun at the very few sequels that are better than the originals. After 2 successful films, there was, of course, a third. Craven wasn't really known for taking the reins on sequels to his films. Sure, he did The Hills Have Eyes Part 2, but look at that film. Aside from the hilarity of being the only film I can think of with a dog having a flashback, it's not exactly great. He also did New Nightmare, which is in the top 3 Nightmare films easily, but that was after a huge number of sequels were already produced. The Scream series is firmly his to direct, and Part 4 was the last project he ever did.
And you have to also, in order to live up to the standards of Scream, sort of analyze that decade and come up with something cogent and meaningful to say about it that's original.
One huge thing that was different for Scream 3 from the first 2 is the writing. Kevin Williamson wrote the first 2 films, and they feel very cohesive together. Williamson stayed on to produce Part 3 with Craven, but handed the writing duties over to Aaron Kruger, who, apart from a very coincidental last name, had only one major screenwriting credit to his name at this point, the very dark but well-made Arlington Road. After Scream 3, Kruger would go on to craft the American Ring films, as well as other 2000s horrors, Lance's favorites, Skeleton Key and Blood and Chocolate, before moving over to Hollywood blockbusters like the Transformers series, Dumbo, and the new Top Gun sequel. Scream 3 isn't a bad movie, but even IMDb buries it under every other entry in the series and the TV show when you go to search it.
Riley, oh my god. Where are you? What's happening?
What the fuck is this?
It is a prime candidate for black sheep status, as even with its flaws, and there are a few, it's worth a watch, particularly when you are making a run at the whole series. The movie opens with that same direct jump into an ongoing story that the first 2 films had. This time it's with series regular Cotton Weary, played by Liev Schreiber. Now, it's cool to see what he has done with his life since the last film, but the problem with this scene is that after the first 2 films, you know he's dead. Drew Barrymore, Omar Epps, and Jada Pinkett Smith are the first characters we see in the first 2 films, and they are the first characters to die. Kudos to the film for offing what could have been a main character so early, but man, he could have been such a fun addition to the rest of the main cast. The killer seeks him out to find out what happened to Sydney, who has isolated herself and become a crisis counselor, before the film cuts. I promise I'll make a stab at not doing too many puns here. To Courtney Cox's Gale Weathers giving a speech to a college class. A detective informs her of Cotton's death and asks for help in finding Sydney as a picture of her mother was left at the crime scene. Gale heads with Officer McDreamy. I'm sure there's a huge crossover viewership of Grey's Anatomy in this channel. To the studio where Stab 3 is being filmed. Cotton had a cameo in the film, and it's here where we get our very own awesome cameo. Legendary Roger Corman shows up as a studio exec talking about how bad press is something they don't want, which is one of the great meta jokes I've ever heard, and we also get introduced to everyone's second favorite Lance as an old school horror director helping with the movie's production. Gale and her awful haircut.
What the fuck is this?
Definitely the scariest part of the movie. Run into Officer Dewey, who is helping support the movie as a technical advisor, and showing Parker Posey how to be a more accurately awful Gale. David Arquette's the MVP of this movie. Dewey, while being fairly inept, is the one you root for the most and seems to be the only member of the returning cast not just mailing it in. Props for the consistency too, as Dewey has been inept in all of the films to date. While this is going on, Sydney has one of the poorer subplots of the film with the Dream Mother. I get that she would have conflicted feelings about her mom and her actions, but the series has always tried to stay somewhat grounded with real people doing the killings and being smart about it. Adding in any form of haunting or supernatural content feels kinda wrong. Sarah Darling, here played by Jenny McCarthy, becomes the first victim on the studio lot as she is supposed to meet the director at a fitting, but instead is met and killed by this movie's Ghostface. The production is shut down and the killer has found Sydney and begun calling her using the now advanced voice box. The remaining cast meets at a house to mourn their roles when a bodyguard, played by Patrick Warburton, is stabbed and the house is blown up with another cast member inside. If you've seen the movie, then you know I'm skipping over some parts, but this movie's an hour and 56 minutes and really didn't need to be more than 90 to get across the point. Dewey actually does something productive and unloads his gun into the Ghostface killer before he rolls away. The remaining cast is obviously terrified, and the cops are no closer to solving the mystery, even with Dewey discovering that the pictures of Sydney's mom left at the murder scenes All were taken at the very studio the crimes are happening at. Dewey calls Sid, but she shows up of her own volition before he finishes his voicemail. Out of nowhere, Randy's sister shows up to drop off a tape for them to watch. I get it. Randy was a fan favorite from the first two movies. Hell, he was my favorite part of the first two movies. But this just seems forced, and even lessens the impact of his surprise death from part 2. The two Gales do some digging with legally distinct, non-copyright infringing Carrie Fisher, another one of the great cameos and moments from the movie, and discovers that Sidney's mom made movies with the very same producer who was working on Stab 3 many years ago. The rest of the cast ends up at a birthday party for the director Roman at the producer's house, where they all get picked off one by one. None of the characters, apart from Parker Posey's Gale clone, were really given much time to breathe and grow, so there's almost zero impact when they die. About the only thing it does confirm is that they aren't the killer. The movie tries desperately to make it rain MacGuffins on characters to show that maybe, just maybe, they're the killer before finally revealing the truth. So it turns out that director Roman is actually Sidney's half-brother, and he was the one that orchestrated the killings of the first movie when he showed Billy Loomis the tape of his father.
You. This is all because of you.
The director said.
This is incredibly convoluted, and is one of my least favorite things that movies do. You don't always have to tie things together with previous entries, and certainly don't need to retcon the ideas of better and smarter movies. Sidney kills Roman with the help of Dewey before we get a sugary sweet ending of Sidney opening her house and life back up. The trilogy is over and would go quiet for some time before Scream 4. There are quite a few things done well within Scream 3. The cameos are lovingly thought out and add quite a lot to the frankly ludicrous runtime that the film has.
So how can I help you? Or do you want me to tell you who you look like?
The final third of the film, taking place in an old Hollywood mansion, somehow is able to make it work in terms of tension and giving that horror feel. The problems, however, outrank the wins here. The movie, in case I haven't been crystal clear, is too damn long. On top of that, the runtime is filled with characters we don't really care about, and the ones we're supposed to care about aren't played with any heart by the actors other than Arquette's Dewey.
We're gonna go back to the precinct and we're gonna tell Kincaid and Sidney what we found out.
So the news said this was the precinct. Who's this guy Kincaid?
Scream 3 isn't a complete loss, and I can wholeheartedly recommend it when looking at the entire series. It gets a bad rap for a lot of its creative choices, and rightly so with that fairly dumb ending reveal, but it also tries, man. The third movie in a series can be tricky to pull off. You want to keep the elements that work, but also try to surprise the viewer here and there. It's amazing that the series kept going after this, and if you want to see why, while also having a fun time taking apart what could have been, open a beer and enjoy Scream 3, the black sheep of the series.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.